It's time!
Noah Fant revenge game. We got Russell Wilson going back into Seattle. Should be I don't know. I'd probably call this an interesting matchup is probably what I would call it. I don't know if it's going to be the best, but let's hope it's a good game tonight. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by my colleague Ellie Hernandez. This is the Edge DFS. Ellie, what's going on with you, man? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to have NFL back. Just, fun to sit and watch games all day. And it's also fun to I did a whole lot of best ball. You're doing it with me. So it's really fun to see how the preseason perception of players it impacted our first looks and really just how everything ended up playing out over the weekend. So it's been fun. And real quick, I know I wasn't going to get too crazy on the intro, but I'd say this game would be a little bit it could be a little dangerous, right? All right, back to you. I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, it was good to have football back, a full slate of it. After a few months of doing research and doing our best ball drafts and doing our season longs, we finally get to see some of these players how they're performing. But also, you got to remember, hey, it was only week one. There's a lot that can change. If you look back from week one to the end of the season, every single year, there's a ton that's different. All right, so last night, Sunday Night Football, how did you do? What were some thoughts? Obviously, Dak got injured. Even if he didn't get injured, he was doing absolutely terrible. Maybe we could have got some garbage time points from him, but that was not a good game at all. I had a hard time watching it, and Brady even, the Bucs didn't do that well. They kind of got bailed out by an absolutely terrible team. So how did you do overall on the overall slate for main slate and for Showdown last night?
Showdown I didn't do too great. I won about 35% of my entries back, which, it is fine as long as I didn't zero out entirely. But I ended up doubling up, was pretty profitable on the main slate earlier, so it ended up balancing out. It's it's an interesting situation. Showdown, we start running into different options or different scenarios because especially on these first couple of slates, uh, the slates are just so massive that even if you do get the nuts as far as picking your players and building up your roster, you're almost better off just playing guys that are going to be between 5 to 10% owned so that you can solo those contests. Anyways, how did you do?
I did not do very good yesterday. I really didn't. Mainly, main slate, I think I lost 50% of my entries, and for Showdown, I didn't. Honestly, I probably lost most of it. I was not prepared for a kicker and a defense. And basically I had no lineups that had that combination. So
Right.
it didn't end up well for me. But if we want to do a little bit of review, we want to talk about some of these slates every single game so we don't just blow them off and kind of learn from our mistakes or learn from what we did right. In this case, on the left, I believe this is the one that won in most contests. You got Leonard Fournette at captain, suck up Buccaneers defense, Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and then the lonely Dalton Schultz. I think the opto is Fournette at captain, Noah Brown, suck up, Buccaneers, Schultz, and Mike Evans. So the moral of the story here is if you did a 5-1 with Lenny Fournette at the captain, you probably did okay as long as you had that kicker defense combo, you might have done pretty good. The interesting thing is over here on the right, this one that the opto has no quarterbacks in it. So
Right.
what did we learn from last night besides just, hey, we literally have no clue what's going to happen on these Showdown slates. You got to start with the Vegas line, and you got to kind of deviate with your own opinions from there. But I would have never guessed that this would have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple notes here. The first thing was the game specific. I think I truly overestimated the Cowboys coming back healthy. They're garbage. They're hot garbage, and I'm sorry for Cowboys fans. And this is coming from a dude who just watched his team get annihilated by Patrick Mahomes, right? But I almost felt worse about the Cowboys last night. So there's one thing is we got to take that into account at the beginning of the season. A team that looks great could just come out and shit the bed. We don't know, especially given the 3-week preseason, the extended regular season. But I think the important thing to note here is is when we were building, like the optimals were kind of leaning towards 3-3 stacks. The team total or the implied total for the game, it looked for more balanced builds, but when ended up winning a 5-1. 4-2 was the actual point optimal. So when we're talking about getting different with roster construction, this is how, right? And yeah, I mean, I'm sure this was chopped up several ways, but at the same time, I mean, everyone's running 3-3s where you got the top 10, 15% running different variations with the same chalky players and still being able to hit because they're getting different off the chalk by playing a different construction. So that's really what I learned from last night. Kind of just reinforced that idea of being willing to change how you're building your lineups despite what you're expecting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's we just don't know what's going to happen. We just got to kind of cover our bases. This is why I like doing as many lineups as possible, hopefully in smaller tournaments. But sometimes you got to do the 120,000 tournaments, the 25-cent entries, the dollar entries. I just try to get as many lineups as I can with these. Sometimes I have a better instinct as to what's going to happen than other days, and sometimes I can do higher entry, like single entry type things. But this was definitely one of those things where we had to spread ourselves out. All right, so Ellie,
So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about a little bit of contest
yeah,
selection here. Here, let me pull up this DraftKings. Let me make sure that this is all working. Yep, we're talking. Okay, you could see that, right?
yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want to point out a couple different things here. I mean, if we're just looking right here at the primary contest on DraftKings, this Millie Maker, we're looking at about 200,000 entries, right? And this is 150 max tournament. So when you're playing in a contest like this is where you want to get really weird, really different. Like what was the guy last night? I think he was a $200 wide receiver for Dallas. His name was like Semi Fakuko or whatever.
Fahoko, yeah.
Yeah, he ended up getting some running garbage time last night and probably would have gotten a little bit more run if the Cowboys offense could have done anything. He would have been one of those guys you probably would have needed had the total hit to be able to take down a contest like that. But as you kind of go through these entries, and let's go, you see the single entry, the NFL Showdown 75K bubble, the one you're looking at right there. This one only has 6,000 entries, right? So where Semi might have been a necessary piece in your Millie Maker lineup, down here you might be as simple as playing a 25% chalk Noah Brown. That might be enough
Yeah.
to be able to get an optimal lineup for here. So what one of the things I just really wanted to point it out is really looking at your total entries into your contests, even if it's a single entry, a max, because you go down to some of these, like this single entry is a $15, right? You
Hmm.
get into a $1 single entry that is a similar price pool, then that's probably got to be about 15 times the amount of entries.
Yeah,
So again,
exactly.
your strategy is changing a little bit based on the amount of people, right?
Exactly.
So the bigger the number is on the entries, the more variance that you need to be planning for. Otherwise, the smaller the amount of entries, the more cash build you can go to and slowly pivot off your cash builds as you transition off of there. Get weird. The bigger the contest is, play safe, the smaller it is. That's the summary. And just a quick note I wanted to bring up for today's show.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's our contest selection is almost as important as the lineups we're playing and our overall strategy. If you start out with bad contests, you're setting yourself up for failure. You really are.
Right.
I mean, doing these $33 single entries where there's like, I don't know, I think there was like 1,700 entries. I feel much better about doing that and maybe playing it safe, going with a quarterback, a captain, and then throwing in one low price guy, but staying pretty safe. You still can min cash even if you're off. It's just, I feel like that's the best way to do it. And I'm trying to adjust my strategy because you see those big numbers, you see that 10K to first, 100K to first, 50K to first, and you're like, boom, I got to try that. Well, what about 200 to first in some of these
Right.
tiny contests? I'd rather get 200 to first and just profit every week, and you're going to end up a lot better off. Or at the end of the day, you're going to be looking at your account and saying, I got to redeposit. It
All
happens
right.
to
Then
me all the time.
I want
Not
to I
not
want
all
to
the
steal
time,
that
but
for a minute. I didn't want to spend too much more time on this, but that is a really good point. So yesterday was week one for NFL main slate. One of the things that we like to do is we just mass enter the 10 cent, 25 cent contests. Now I know that doesn't necessarily seem like a big deal, but the competition variance isn't as high in those, right? You got people playing some random dudes, so if you play somewhat normal, you have a pretty good chance of taking something down. But especially on week one. It gives us the opportunity to build 150, 200 lineups, just a bunch of different ways, and kind of get an idea of what roster construction is needed.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of running a $15 bullet into the Millie Maker, you could take that $5, do a 20 max at the 25 cent, do a $2 20 max at 10 cent,
Yeah.
and have 40 lineups and save $7,
Yeah.
right? And you have a bunch of different variants. You can play a bunch of different things that you're comfortable with, and you're not risking as much. You can have a little bit more comfortable build.
And if you hit first place, yeah, you get $25, but it's so much easier to hit first place in a contest like that because you're playing against lesser competition, to be honest.
Well, and $25 off of $7 total invested. If you hit no other lineup, that's still 3.5x your money, right?
Yeah.
You're not doing that in the $15 Millie Maker.
Yeah. And remember, these $3 less contests, the pros can't play in this. You're not going up against all
Right.
these dudes who literally their job is 100% to play DFS and they win a lot of money. You don't have to go up against those guys, and I'd rather not, to be honest. All right, so let's get into this matchup. By the way, guys, if you want us to leave some comments in the YouTube comments down below, if you want us to do a general, more strategy show like this and maybe spend 10, 15 minutes just talking about the things we kind of talked about here, let us know and we'll bust out one of those shows and we'll sort of pin it on our profile so you can always go back to it. But let's talk about this matchup. So Denver going into Seattle. Once again, we have a road favorite, 3 straight of those on Showdown. The over-under, the total is low. It's 44, and the ownership is clearly way skewed to Denver, and you can't really blame them. I tend to think in a matchup like this, we saw the first, a lot of the first games that we saw where there's a lot of mistakes happening. These players aren't playing in the preseason as much. This is the almost their first preseason game as a unit with the ones. And we're seeing a lot of mistakes happen. We're seeing defenses being more impactful. We're seeing some kickers that need to step up and take over some of these point scoring. So in this game, I do think obviously that Denver should win this game, but I really think it's going to be a little bit closer than people think, especially being in Seattle. There is a home field advantage for them clearly. And I mean, look, Russ is a professional. He's been doing this a long time, but he's going back to the place that he spent his entire career, won Super Bowl there. It's kind of a big deal. He might be a little bit more emotional than usual. I'm gonna kind of play that narrative a little bit more. I don't think that I'm not picking Seattle to win this, but I think that this could be like a, I don't know, 21-17 game. Maybe Denver's leading 21-10 or 21-7 or something like that throughout most of the game, and then at the end of the game we get a random garbage time. I don't know. I just think that I'm going to play this as it's going to be a little bit closer. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit on the fence to your idea here. I'm leaning more towards the fact the Broncos should be favored to win, and I do expect them to kind of dominate this game a little bit. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but your narrative discussion got me reminded. Apparently, there's been a news report, if you will, over the past day or two that one of the reasons why Seattle was looking to get off of Russ was their issues started back in the Marshawn Lynch Super Bowl. Apparently, he's the one who called the audible to a pass play, and there
No
were
way.
right. Well, again, this is a rumor. There are people within the front office and in the coaching staff and other players who were disappointed with him because they thought he did it to win MVP. So he didn't want
Oh
Marshawn
my
Lynch to win MVP.
God.
Now, I
Oh.
get that's probably the front office or whatever on the Seattle side kind of to soften the blow because he's probably, I mean, he took your team to Super Bowl and won. The only other person did it with Matt Hasselbeck, right? And he didn't win. So it's interesting to me, but that narrative is there. But look, I do want to talk about getting different tonight. I think it could be as simple to your point is this building a 3-3. Everyone's expecting the blowout here. So this is a night where we can expect to see a lot of 4-2 builds, 5-1 builds. So getting a little bit heavier on the Seattle side might be viable, but we'll see.
Well, before we like fully commit to that 3-3, I think let's see how the builds, like I built a little bit before the show started, but we want to do some of this real time so that we can kind of adjust our
Right.
thoughts, and we'll see kind of how it goes. It could 4-2s could end up being that perfect mix here. But I think you're right. 3-3s could be the way to go because of that discrepancy in ownership for sure. Um, All right, well, let's get into injuries here. So there's a couple to talk about. KJ Hamler is questionable. I don't know why. Sorry, this is an old one. I apologize. But KJ Hamler is questionable. And Kenneth Walker III is also questionable, who's that number 2 option, the rookie for Seattle. We haven't really seen much of him. We don't know what to expect from him. What happens if Kenneth Walker plays? Are we still interested in him? Or are we worried about guys like Homer and DJ Dallas and these kind of guys getting in the way? And why would they run Kenneth Walker out there if he's hurt? Let him rest, right?
Right. I mean, look, if I think Rashad Penny's their guy, they want to see him play, but he's been persistently injured. And Kenneth Walker, I don't know what it is with Seattle and Pete Carroll, but having backs that can maybe play 3/4 of the season is what they like. So I'm really curious to see what they do, how many backs that they come into the game active tonight. It's very possible all 4 backs could be active, and that just makes this kind of a nightmare situation for me, in my opinion.
All right, so what do you think? Should we get into this breakdown?
Let's do it.
Break it down.
All right, so Russell Wilson's 11.8K, Geno Smith is 8,600. That's like Ben DiNucci price territory here. That actually makes me kind of interested in a guy like Geno Smith. Look, this is his last chance to be a starting quarterback. He's starting quarterback by default. They don't want him to be starting quarterback. They wanted his backup. Why am I blanking on his name? Drew Lock. I almost called him something else. They want Drew Lock to be the guy, but he just didn't step up. And he didn't have a long enough preseason after being traded. But for now, Geno Smith is the guy. If he comes out and wins a game like this, I mean, he's going to cement himself as a starting quarterback. So narrative-wise, I'm kind of messing with playing some Geno Smith here because he's not going to be that high owned. But at the end of the day, I mean, it is Geno Smith, so you can't be too excited about it, right? I mean, so with the price discrepancy here, I know Russell Wilson's 11.8K. That's pretty expensive. Geno is 8.6K. Can we fit both these guys together? And in a low total game, is it better to focus on getting quarterbacks in because those guys are going to be touching the ball at every play, or do we want to try to avoid them because there's not going to be as many possible touchdown passes? It's going to be more spread out potentially. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm kind of torn on this one. I think both situations or there's two situations that could play out here. I think you can probably play both. I'm with you on this. I think Geno Smith is priced decently enough, and he has rushing upside. So at 8,600, if he throws for 100 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, but rushes for 50 and a touchdown, he's probably going to pay off his tag. So I like him because of that. And Russell Wilson, he's in a better spot with a better team. There's a lot more balance here, so there's a good chance that he could take advantage of his weapons, Jerry Judy and Cortland Sutton. Um, but I also think there's a world where you can fade both quarterbacks and take both defenses, a kicker, and 3 running backs or something. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think this is one of those games where you just need to make sure your lineup build is consistent with what you think is going to happen. If you're running 2 quarterbacks and 4 pass catchers, you better be hoping for a 45-50 total. But that's really where I'm at. I think you can play both. I think you can fade both. It's just gonna we'll see when we get to the builds.
A guy like Russell Wilson at this point in his career, you probably can't expect him to get a lot of rushing yards. Maybe he can get a random, quarterback sneak touchdown. But if you're putting a guy like Russell Wilson at captain, well, join the club. He's going to be the highest owned by far,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to get really different. But the thing is, if you put a guy like him at captain, you're going to want to put at least 2 pass catchers, or a Melvin Gordon who can catch the ball out of the backfield, something like that. And if you put him at captain, I feel like you got to kind of assume that this game is going to be 27, 28 points scoring from Denver. That's just my thought on it. So I'm going to avoid playing quarterbacks at the captain unless I'm going to get a little Geno Smith with a weird lineup in there. All right, well, let's go to running backs. But before we start the running backs, let's look at this tweet that you sent me a few days ago. So from the fantasy source, report Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett hints at quote hot hand approach between Williams and Gordon. So that's kind of interesting to me. What are your thoughts on that? Like we saw a report, I saw a tweet the other day that we showed in our show about Leonard Fournette getting 60% of the snaps because they want to save him, and then the guy comes out and absolutely crushes it. So we have to take this with a grain of salt. Can you listen to this? I don't even know what to think.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring up here. This is a great visual to see what we're looking at. Now, normally, I wouldn't necessarily be as concerned if they were more equal in price, but I'm expecting close to a 54-45 type of split until there's somebody who does get a hot hand. And what happens if both are have hot hands, right? What if both backs are averaging 7.5 yards per touch? Then they're both going to continue to split touches. And just given how high Javonte Williams is priced, that just makes Melvin Gordon just way more interesting to me. And I'll kind of keep an eye on ownership projections as we get closer to lock. But 7,400, I don't necessarily expect him to be all that popular. It's a weird like dead zone price for a running back that we absolutely have no idea what kind of volume he can get. Now, we've seen a lot of notes from touts and whatever in the offseason about these split backfields, right? You got Tony Pollard, Zeke, you got AJ Dillon, and Aaron Jones, and these backfields were actually split. So
Hmm.
I really do expect everybody to come out on a more balanced approach tonight. It's week one. Why would they give either of these guys 95% of the carries? So
Yeah.
um because of that, I'm leaning towards Melvin Gordon. And I don't know, man. If I lose money because Javante has 180 and 2 touchdowns, then I'm not going to be that concerned.
Yeah, which is totally possible, but at 10.2K and then trying to get Russell Wilson in your lineup, where do you go from there?
Right,
I mean, it's
right.
it's very difficult to start building with those two guys at that price. So at 7,400, a guy like Melvin Gordon, we know Melvin Gordon's a bona fide number one, at least in the past. We know he's taken that role. Javonte Williams is clearly the guy here, but is it going to be 70-30 or is it going to be 55-45? If it's 55-45 or even somewhere close to that, I think Melvin Gordon's a great option at 7,400. Javonte Williams will be the second highest owned captain. So from there, with the high price tag, you're going to have to get really creative in the flex. So give me a little bit more Melvin Gordon. And I think you can play these guys both together, considering
Yep.
if you're going through that game script where it's a 7-point favorite for an NFL game, that's a big number. So if
Yep.
that's what you think is going to happen and they're going to be running the ball a lot in the second half, both these guys are going to get run. And I think you can play with both of them. All right, so let's go to Seattle here. Obviously, Chris Carson retired, unfortunately. It's a sad thing to see. He was a great running back. Just injuries got to him. He's retired now. Rashad Penny at 7,800 is the guy. He finished strong last year. You've also got guys like Travis Homer and DJ Dallas. Travis Homer is 1,400. DJ Dallas is 400. And then Kenneth Walker, the new addition here at 2,200. Now, he is questionable. I believe it's I think it's a hamstring. Let me look that up while we're talking. But he's questionable. What do we do here if he plays tonight? And then obviously, what are your thoughts on Rashad Penny as like a workhorse in a game where they probably are going to be losing this game for a lot of it?
Yeah, actually, I don't mind the Seattle running game all that much. I said that terribly. I don't mind playing Seattle's running backs a little bit just because we know Seattle loves to run the ball. That's where their offense is going to come from. Pete Carroll could run the ball 60 times and only throw it 5 times. Who knows? I think that the biggest concern that I have is how many active running backs they come into the game with. If Kenneth Walker is out and they're just coming in with Penny, Homer, and Dallas, then I think it opens up the situation for me. I like maybe getting a little bit of Homer or Dallas just because of the savings there. But I like Penny at 7,800. I am a bit concerned that if all four come in, that there is going to be a rotation. And I'm concerned that if Kenneth Walker is out, that it's going to be a little bit unpredictable, and you could still see, a third split between all three of these guys. Again, it's week one. Rashad Penny is coming back from an injury where he was supposed to be the one back last year, right? After
Mm-hmm.
Chris Carson got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So they may just ease him into this, kind of like what we saw with Chris Godwin last night. I don't know if it's on the same level, but if Penny's going to be your feature back for your new quarterback you're trying to draft this offseason, then they may limit him in a little bit. But at 7,800, I don't think it's too crazy taking a risk. The other guys, it just depends on who's active, but probably won't have much unless Walker's out.
Yeah, look, guys, join our Discord. We're always in there talking, especially right before lock. Once we get all the news, we're going to give you all the news that you want, and talk about how we would adjust. But if you don't have Discord and you don't want to do that, just look for in the YouTube comments. I'll be posting some updates as we get closer to lock. But Kenneth Walker does play. I'm interested in him at 2,200. If he's out, it makes a guy like DJ Dallas at 400 interesting. Seems like maybe Penny and Homer split those one through first down, second down, and maybe DJ Dallas comes in for third down. I have no clue. Does anybody really know besides the team? No, but we're just kind of guessing here. I like Rashad Penny at 7,800. I think he's going to touch the ball quite a bit. This is Seattle. They like to run the ball, especially with the bad quarterback. So keep an eye on that. All right, wide receivers here. Let's start with Seattle. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, one of the best duos in the league, is just, they're being suffocated by a guy that might not be able to get him the ball. DK Metcalf's 8,400. It's a good price for him. Tyler Lockett's 7K. Tyler Lockett has for years been one of my favorite showdown options. I just don't know if I like him that much now because he's a home run kind of guy with a guy like Russell Wilson at quarterback who can get you the ball down 50 yards down the field. He's a perfect option. He's incredible. I don't think that Geno Smith can do that. So I don't know if they're changing up the way they're using him. I don't know what they're doing. Bottom line is, if I'm going to go with one guy, it's going to be DK Metcalf because I don't care who's throwing the ball. An end zone target, whatever the 50-50 ball they're throwing up in the air, I'm taking DK Metcalf to catch that. And I really do think at 8,400, he's going to be like the fifth highest owned captain potentially. I'm going to utilize that. I think DK Metcalf at captain is a pretty good option here. And if I'm going, if I do think that this can still be a blowout or something, hey, put DK at captain and throw five Denver guys in the flex. I still think he can get there. So talk to me about the rest of these guys, Ellie, and just let's go from top to bottom here quickly and talk about some of these also low end guys if we're even interested in them at all.
Yeah, I may like Tyler Lockett a lot more than you. I think that he's priced great at 7K. I don't know if you need to get crazy with him in the flex. I think I would prefer DK Metcalf. But if you're worried about Lockett, he is a big play guy, right? Like you see him. I mean, can you pull up his numbers real quick from last year?
Yeah.
You're going to see stuff like 35 and then 3, 27 and 6. So to me, he becomes more of an optimal captain play versus playing him in the flex position. But then again, at 7K, it's still not a terrible flex play. But if he has 102 touchdowns, he will be the optimal captain. So I like him at 7K at the captain spot. And these other guys, I'm really just not that interested in. They could get a little bit of action just because Geno Smith was expected to be the number 2
Yeah.
quarterback. So there's a good chance he would have been practicing with some of these guys.
Yeah.
And then he was doing it all last season, right? So he may have a little bit more familiarity. So if you think that this game can stay a little bit competitive, then running a 4 stack with maybe one of these punt wide receivers isn't a bad option.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm going to be getting there. Yeah, that's where I'm at with the wide receiver group.
With all the high price guys we have to try to fit it in the slate. I don't see myself getting a lot of Metcalf Lockett, and if I do get those, I might want to throw Geno in there, and I don't know if I can do that. So what I might end up doing is, trust me, I want to get both of them in. I just don't know if I can. But what I might end up doing is like, Metcalf with a Marquise Goodwin, or like one or the other, and throw in one of these other guys, or get a Noah Fant or something like that, which we'll get to. But Marquise Goodwin is a home run hitter type guy. Eskridge and Penny Hart are okay options, but I'm not going to be more than like 5 or 10% of them in my total lineups. Anything else to add before we move on?
Nope.
All right, Denver. Jerry Jeudy's at 8,200. He is the highest projected guy. Cortland Sutton at 9,400 is seemingly the number 1 wide receiver on this team. If you look at the depth charts, KJ Hamler is questionable, so I don't know what to think about him. If he's in at 4,400, I'm interested in him. And these other guys at $200, I don't know much about them, to be honest, and I don't know that I want to really go too crazy on them. Maybe 1 or 2 random lineups, but I think I'm focused on the top 2 guys here. If KJ Hamler's out, it might be worth looking at Virgil or Washington or any of these other guys. Thoughts on what's your order of players here as far as who I know you love Jerry Jeudy, But are you going to end up getting more Cortland Sutton in a game like this?
Yeah, I think so. Cortland Sutton is like a less fast, but just better polished, a DK Metcalf. So Russell Wilson isn't necessarily going. He's not losing much in his receiving core going from Tyler Lockett and DK to Jerry Jeudy and Cortland. I think they've kind of fit the same roles that he was dealing with on the other team. Cortland being that DK position and Judy kind of being the speed demon up the field like Tyler Lockett was. So I think both these guys are in play. I think now we need to start considering what we've seen with Russ in the past is maybe not stacking both those guys in the same lineup. I think we've seen that work once in his career, and it was
Yeah.
last season or maybe the one before. But I guess moving on from them, KJ Hamler is the interesting one. At 4,400, he's just barely more expensive than the kickers. And he does have a little bit of upside here. If he was putting up fantasy points with Drew Lock at quarterback, imagine having Russell Wilson. Now, I know people might think Russell Wilson's past his prime, but we had to watch him twice a season for the past decade. He's better than what people want to give him credit for,
He's still
and
a
that
top
dude
10
makes
quarterback.
stuff.
He's still a
Yeah,
top 10 quarterback. I don't care what you say. He's still good. He still can be a top 5 quarterback if he really is in the right situation.
If it wasn't for Drew Brees and then Russell Wilson kind of adding his flair to the Drew Brees type quarterback position, like guys like Kyler Murray may not get as much love.
Yeah.
So like there's serious precedent to him. But yeah, man, I think you can start looking at some of these other guys, Virgil and Washington, if Hamler's out. If not, I really expect him to concentrate the volume to those three guys. I expect to see double tight end sets and very, very ground oriented offensive attack. So I don't expect Virgil and Washington to get the field much if Hamler's active.
And Judy and Sutton here are great captain options. They're going to be a little bit popular, but they're not going to be that max popular like Javonte Williams and Russell Wilson. So Jerry, Judy, Sutton, I'm going to have plenty of them at captain. I'm going to try to spread things out and get as many different captains as I can that I feel comfortable with. And both of these guys are great options. All right. So, and you know what? Last point here. What you were saying about Russell Wilson, about his 2 wide receivers, is true. Every Seattle show in the past we'd be like, okay, all right, DK Metcalf, which one do we choose? Is it Lockett or Metcalf? Because we just knew that was what you do. You don't usually pick both of them. I don't know if that translates to the Broncos, but it's something to think about. All right, so tight end. All right, you're gonna have to help me with his name here. Can you say this name?
Albert O. That's what we're calling
Albert O. Aqua something at 5K. Tomlinson at 200. Saubert at 200. This is a showdown slate. This is a team that likes to run the ball, so they're probably going to have a decent amount of 2 tight end sets, maybe a little goal line fake, a little naked boot toss out to Eric Tomlinson in the corner of the end zone. That could happen at $200 in a low scoring game. If a guy like that scored a touchdown, that's going to change everything. So thoughts here, 5K for the starting tight end Albert here. Any interest in these other guys?
I like Alberto. I think 5K is very reasonable price tag. And as opposed to playing him versus KJ Hamler, for example, Hamler is going to be the third string guy. Alberto is going to be on the field literally anytime there's a tight end set. He's tight end 1. And again, he was doing pretty decent last year, backing up Noah Fant and catching passes from Drew Lock. So I think that's something to take into consideration. Being the number 1 guy now, he's going to have a little bit more volume coming at him, and Russell Wilson throwing the ball. This isn't Drew Lock anymore. So I like Alberto. I think he's in a decent spot. I'll probably end up having a pretty good amount of him just because of the way that he's priced. As far as these other guys, Tomlinson and Saubert, again, it depends on what they come in active with. But I don't think that they're terrible punts. Again, if $200 is the difference from you going from a kicker to a guy like Albert O, that might be enough to save a little bit of chalk and get a little bit more upside in one of these bigger contests.
All right, let's move over to the other side here. We've got Noah Fant, who is a solid tight end dealing with some injuries, but 6,200. He was involved in that trade. I mean, I like Noah Fant at 6,200. Will Dissly was always the guy that we thought could sort of recapture that fantasy value that he's had in the past. A few years ago, he was great. He's never been able to get back to that state. And with a guy like Noah Fant here, I really think that he is the guy. and we might see a little bit of Will Dissly. Will Dissly's 800, Noah Fant 6,200. You got to be interested in Noah Fant in a game like this, right? I mean, you're talking about a quarterback who's not very confident in his skills potentially, and having a big tight end that can go across the middle and catch any ball you throw up is a huge deal in a game like this.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you kind of ignore all that and just look at kind of the efficient market lines that they have for Noah Fant on the season totals, um, I think people are under projecting him based on what kind of he's expected to have throughout the season. He should be probably top 12 tight ends, um, and I think that he's a great play at his price. Uh, when was the last time that the Seahawks had an actual tight end? I mean, we need to consider what's actually happening in Seattle, right? They have a lot of periphery pieces at the skill positions on offense, so that when they do have the ability to go and draft one of those top 2, top 3 quarterbacks in one of these next drafts, they should be off to a good, a good start offensively. So I think that they're gonna try and get Noah Fant involved pretty early on so that he can get familiar with the team. Find out what you got at this guy before you have to go and, go find your franchise quarterback. So long-winded, off topic. I love Noah Fant. I think he's a great option. Will Disley, I don't care about.
And
Not
I
not
I
this night.
I might sprinkle a little Will Disley in because he's $800 and he always screws me. But if he does score a touchdown in this game, in the game that I don't play him, I'm going to be pissed at myself. So I got to at least get a couple lineups with him, but I don't recommend
Yeah.
it. All right, so kickers and defense here. We got to talk a little bit more about this in a game that has a 44 total. Now, look, this is Seattle. They're playing outdoors. I think it's like a 20% chance of rain or something like that. I don't think that they're actually projecting that this rains, but it is outdoors, um, and it's a low total. So look, McManus and Myers, each of these guys could break the slate like Suckoff did last night. But they're going to be coming around 20% owned, either of these guys. So what are your thoughts? Do we want to kind of be with the field and try to get at least like a kicker in most of our lineups, or is that going overboard?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be targeting kickers. I think staying around the 20 to 25% range, being even with the field is kind of the way to go. But I'm going to be doing a lot of hand building for this slate tonight, right? So if it feels better having one of these guys in as the last piece, then I don't hate going. I think one of the things to consider is Jason Myers might be the one who's a little bit more of a question mark. We really don't know what we're going to see from the Seattle offense. Are they even going to be able to get the ball past midfield to stall out in field goal range? We don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
Geno Smith could he could come out and be okay, like we've seen from him in the past, or he could come out and be Geno Smith, the perennial third stringer who's backing up mobile quarterbacks, right? So I think that impacts Jason Myers' value a lot.
You saw last year, Jason Myers didn't really get a lot of opportunities, or at least he didn't make his opportunities. You have one game, week 17, at 18 fantasy points. The rest are pretty low, and that's with Geno. So wait, was Jason Myers on the team last year? Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
If he wasn't, I'm sorry, I don't know shit about kickers. I don't care about him. So correct me in the comments. But if that's the case,
No, he did.
he did. Okay.
They played Arizona the last week. So
Okay. Anyways, well, we won't talk much more about kickers, but I think you got to try to think about getting them involved. But don't go too crazy on them. Last night, or the show for last night, I talked about if each of these guys are 20% owned, there's maybe a little bit of overlap when it comes to double kicker lineups. But you're talking about 30 to 40% of lineups, every lineup is probably going to have one kicker in it. So that's huge leverage if these kickers don't do much. But at the same time, it also will absolutely crush you if the kickers get 11, 12 fantasy points. All right. Defense, Broncos 4,800, Seahawks 3,200. You got to think about the Broncos in a game like this against Geno Smith. I think they're going to be very popular. I think 10% at captain even in a game like this. Thoughts?
yeah, I don't mind him at captain. I think you need to have a little bit of exposure to them. We could easily see 7, 8 sacks, a couple picks. Anyways, this is an opportunity to play the Broncos defense. Now, I do have kind of a crazy idea here. I don't think necessarily that Seahawks defense is out of it entirely. Like as much as we want to talk about the narrative game for Russell Wilson, right? There is a bit of a narrative game that's going to come from the Seattle Seahawks side. This is going to be the first time that Pete Carroll one of the most elite secondary coaches that we've seen in the NFL, has had an opportunity to actually go out and play his secondary against Russell Wilson. So you could see something as this could be simply a defensive battle. We don't know what we're going to get from the Seahawks defense at 3,200. If you think there's a potential that they're going to go out and just chase down Russ Wilson all night, this might be a night to stack some defenses and running backs and just pray.
Yeah, and look, Broncos defense at captain, more often than not, you're not going to see an opto or a Millie Maker winner with a defense at captain, but it happens, and we saw it on the very first slate on Thursday night. So it does happen, and if you're doing, if you're multi-entering, you want to get a little bit of share of Broncos here, both in the flex and maybe one or two at captain, just to be sure, because you never know. But if you're doing like one or two lineups, I wouldn't go down that route. That's just me personally. All right, so I think we're good here. Let's move over to our captain choice. We're gonna crown their ass.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Ellie, you're going with Sutton. I'm going with DK. Talk to me about Sutton.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much DK, but with Russell Wilson. I think he's in a prime position to go off. We've seen him for the past couple of years being in a position to have a breakout season. He's finally got the quarterback to do it, and everything that I've heard, all indications at camp, it sounds like he's been Russ's favorite target. So, not to get too overhyped on it, but I think he's the guy tonight.
PPR, I mean, if he gets 9 receptions and a touchdown and 100 yards, he's probably going to be the guy. For me, it's either DK or Lockett. I think Lockett is a very good choice because of his home run ability, but basically those you got to consider some of those lineups with him at captain just dead if he doesn't have one of these 30-point games. But DK is a little bit more consistent, and he's a guy that can help a weaker quarterback look good in the red zone, and that's one of the things. That's going to be a huge deal. First of all, can they get in the red zone? And if they do, are they going to end up kicking field goals because they can't convert? Guy like DK Metcalf, they can double team him in the back of the end zone. He'll still catch a touchdown. So keep an eye on that. If DK scores a touchdown and maybe they score 14, 15, or they scored 13 points and DK has the touchdown, he might be the guy. He will be the highest scoring guy on that team, and you're going to have him in the overall in your overall lineups. All right, so fades. Ellie, you're just fading Seattle in general here. I think a lot of people are going to be on your side with this. One way to get different is to play 2 or 3 Seattle players. Could be the way to get different. For me, I'm fading the over game script. I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna be a shootout. I don't think. I think you mix in a defense, you mix in a kicker here and there, and maybe not both quarterbacks. And you go wide receiver at captain. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Anything else to add to this?
Yeah, and just when we say I'm fading Seattle, this means I'm leaning closer to 5-1 and 4-2 builds. As we start building here, we'll see if that's actually viable, and understand this isn't a hard line in the sand, right? These are our initial thoughts that we're looking at and trying to build around.
All right, so let's get into our lineup build. Throw us a like, guys, real quick. Also, hit that subscribe button. We're doing 3 shows a week, most likely, depending on. I mean, next week we have 2 Monday night games, right? So maybe we'll do them more. So hit that bell button as well. You'll get notified when we upload, because we upload sometimes different times depending on our work schedules. So help us out with that and get us to 50 likes for this video. We'd appreciate it. So this is the opto. Russell Wilson at captain, DJ Dallas, Albert O, Judy, Geno Smith, and Sutton. So you got Russell Wilson at captain. You got Geno Smith in the flex. What is this? This is a 4-2, right?
3-3.
Is it? Yeah. Oh
no, you're right.
No, it's 4-2.
4-2.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of lineups are going to be like this. You're gonna stick 1 or 2 Seattle guys in the flex, and jam in a bunch of guys from Denver. Just how it's going to be, and this is the right kind of lineup. You got Judy, Sutton, and Albert O in the flex with a captain Russell. This is how you should be building lineups. I don't know that I'm going to have this lineup. DG Dallas at $400. We have to wait to see who's active, but it's not bad. It's not a bad lineup, and I think a lineup like this will be very popular. But let's build our own lineups here. If we're entering bigger contests with a lot of entries, we got to get a little different. So Do you want to just start? Who do you want to start with here?
Let's just start with Sutton.
All right. Let's go Sutton at captain. You want to do
Then,
Russ in the flex?
Yeah, let's start with Russ, Gino, and let's get a pass catcher there, right? You want to run DK and see where we're at?
Let's see where we're at. 35 a pop. So let's get a kicker or a defense in there right here and see what kind of, unless you want to go a different route.
Let's go with kicker from what
Broncos?
Denver. There you go. Yeah.
So 2,900 left. So Marquise Goodwin, that's a pure punt there. No clue what he's gonna do. Kenneth Walker, if he's active, is 2.2K. Travis Homer, 1.4K. Obviously, Disley. You got a bunch of punts here at the end. So having this lineup to me with, I think you from Metcalf, you might want to go down to somebody else. Maybe a tight end for Seattle.
Maybe Lockett.
Yeah, you could go Lockett.
Going to Lockett give us.
Let's see. That saves you about 1.4K. Let's go back to the kicker here. McManus, 4,300. That's a little bit more. That's a little bit better. You can't quite get Hamler, but you can get. Yeah, we're in the same range unless you want to go double kicker lineup. So you're kind of in that same range. So actually, hang on a second. Actually, instead of McManus, let's go Myers. That gets you to KJ Hamler if he's active. So that's kind of interesting.
I like that.
That's kind of interesting right there. You've got Russell in the flex with two of his pass catchers, and you run it back with Geno Smith, Lockett, and a field goal kicker. I like this. I really do like this. Is there any do you want to run this a little bit different with Sutton at captain? Was it kind of the same core, or what do you think? What if we went down to from Lockett? What if we went down to Noah Fant? Does that do anything for us?
Let's do Noah Fant. Let's try and force a 4-2. Let's try and get 2 more Denver.
Okay, 2 more Denver. So let's go low end for Denver. What's the lowest guy you'd be comfortable playing? Is it a guy like KJ Hamler if he's active?
Yeah, I think it might be.
Let's just try it. And then 4,900, that gets us Broncos defense. I don't hate that at all. I don't hate that.
Yeah, I do like this lineup.
Or you could let's go back to kicker. So let's try McManus here. Try to stick with our 4-2. 5,100, that gets us Albert O. That's not bad at all. Two tight ends in a lineup like this. That's the kind of roster construction that a lot of people aren't building. They're not putting in Fant and Albert O.
So one more. Let's come off of Geno. Let's put in Lockett, and then
coming off of Geno, going Lockett,
and then put in Rashad Penny.
I was gonna say that. Perfect. Yeah, 9,300. What do you think? What's next? Do we go kicker, or do we want to try to avoid kicker in this lineup?
I want to. Let's go. Can we do kicker and defense? I think that'll fit nicely. Actually.
Yeah, let's try it. So Broncos, we're still doing 4-2 here.
Yeah.
5,100. Does that get us defense?
Well, that actually gets us Albert O.
Albert O or defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'd probably do with this lineup is the last 2 spots I'd go with the other kicker from Seattle, and then I'd pop in Broncos defense and Albert O. And one thing to mention here, guys, we brought it up in the last one. Whatever optimizer you're using, if you're using an optimizer, make sure you're allowing players to go against your defense. There's a lot. I know with Fantasy Cruncher, there's a big setting that says players allowed against defense. It's usually set to 0, so you're not going to get any of these kind of lineups. You're not going to get any defense usually. Just make sure that's selected properly. All right, so let's move over to. You want to go DK here and see, or do you want to do anything else?
Yeah, let's do DK.
All right, DK coming up. All right, so we want to go both quarterbacks here. What do you think? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, let's run both quarterbacks. And
I mean, we got to get a guy like Javonte Williams in eventually here, right?
You know what? Let's pull out Russ. Let's do that. Let's do Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon.
Cool. I like that.
And then I kind of like let's you want to throw in Noah Fant and see where
Yeah.
we're at.
Noah Fant, that's 5K. So that gets us Albert O, gets us Broncos defense. That is a 3 that's a 4 no, that's a 3-3.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's
I don't know if I would put Broncos defense with a 3 stack, with 2 pass catchers. So
true, but
maybe
all it takes
yeah,
is one fumble recovery, and it's minus 1 point from that player, and it's 6 the other way. You know what I mean? So, or 7 the other way. So
yep,
that's why it's no, not a lot of people are putting Metcalf in the captain. First of all, yeah, a decent amount, but running it back with Broncos in the flex and 2 running backs.
right.
I mean, but that it kind of fits the game script here. If this is going to be a 44 total, and you think that Metcalf can get 8 receptions and a touchdown or something, that this could be the way to go. So I'm
I mean,
entering this lineup.
I like this. So this is a specific game script, right? This is a great lineup for. We really think that this is a blowout with Denver, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Russ passes 12 times and they're just running with Williams and Gordon all day long.
Yep. All right. You want to pull Geno out here? Let's. I like the Javonte and Melvin situation here. Maybe we find Sutton, or we go another wide receiver here and stick him in there. What do you think about a guy like Jerry Jeudy here at 8,200?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's throw in Jerry Jeudy, and then
Let's do a 2-4.
let's
Let's do a 2-4. Let's go
let's.
Metcalf and the kicker or something like that. You know?
Well, what about this? What about Metcalf and Kenneth Walker, 2,200 running back?
Yep. If he's active, obviously, pay attention to that. Don't go entering this lineup and not know that he's active or not. That leaves us with 9,400. That gets us a guy. I mean, that gets us Sutton. I don't think we want that though. I mean, necessarily. We got Jeudy and Sutton with no Russ, but
right,
which is not ideal. But we've seen crazier things. So maybe instead of him, you could go Geno Smith here if you want to cover that. But I don't know. Maybe we don't need Walker. Maybe we don't need Walker in a situation like this. We can go up a little bit.
Well, I mean, here's another one, right? I mean, even if Walker's out, we go down to DJ Dallas, right? You
Yeah.
want to throw him in real quick?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
then I think we can get to our boy, Danger Russ.
Can we? 11.2. Nope, not quite. So we can't get him at all in this situation.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, we can leave a lot on the table. That optimal lineup had left like 9,000 on the table. I'm not saying that's a really good idea, but if you find a lineup you like and there's a lot of money on the table, then who cares? So you could put Geno Smith here. You could get crazy and go lower, but I think this is a good starting point. You can kind of figure it out from there. What do you think? Do you want to do another DK lineup? Do you want to do like a Melvin Gordon captain?
I actually wanted to do Melvin Gordon captain. Before we do that, come off of Dallas and just put in the Denver defense real quick and see what that puts us at.
Okay, Denver defense, 6,800. A lot of options at that point. You got Noah Fant, Alberto, KJ Hamler. Not quite Tyler Lockett.
I wouldn't mind like Alberto or even Noah Fant. And anyways, okay. I just wanted to see what the build was like.
Noah Fant. So basically, this is a 2-4. Noah Fant, DK Metcalf with 4 run back. I mean, look, you're putting 2 running backs in the lineup. Fuck it, go all in. Get the Broncos defense while you're at it. You know. All right, let's build a Melvin Gordon captain. The only reason why we're building a Melvin Gordon captain, he's a big question mark. We don't know how much use he's going to get, and he's going to be super low owned. So let's try it for tournaments here. Where the hell is he? Melvin Gordon. All right, so in this game script, do we like Russ? We want to fade Javonte in this and go with Russ, maybe hoping Gordon can catch a few balls out of the backfield and throw in Hamler or something. What do you think? Or not Hamler, but Sutton.
Let's do Russ, and then let's see if we can get 4 Seattle guys.
Okay. All right. So if we're doing 4 Seattle guys, we probably want to go with Geno. Am I wrong, or do you want to go with Penny?
No, I like Geno.
All right, Geno. Let's go DK, And you want to do like Noah Fant here?
What happens if you put in Lockett? What does that leave us with?
Let's try. Then you go low end. You go one of these trash wide receivers at the low end.
Yeah.
3,100. Marquise Goodwin. I mean, it's a pure punt. Don't get me wrong. But you rotate these guys out. Eskridge, Penny Hart, that kind of thing. It could work. Now, if you wanted to get crazy, you could switch out Geno Smith here and put we want to do it? We want to put Rashad in? Let's just try it. 3,900. Does that get us anything? Doesn't quite get us Jason Myers. That would have been kind of nice. But I think this is a good starting point. Now, instead of Lockett, you could always go to Noah Fant here. That gets you 4,700. That gets you a lot more options. That gets you KJ Hamler. That gets you McManus. That gets you either kicker. So in this situation, you throw Jason Myers in there, you got yourself a 2-4, and you hope that Melvin Gordon scores you 2 touchdowns and Russell Wilson spreads the ball out to the rest of his wide receivers. He doesn't concentrate on one guy or the other. Hey, I actually like the building today.
Yep. I didn't feel like we had to force any random punts in there. But again, we just need to be careful on finding out who's active, because that is going to matter tonight.
So let's talk about a few things here to end the show. I'm first look. Sorry, hang on. People are going to get confused. There we go. Final thoughts. All right. So who's your favorite low price value option on this slate as of right now, depending on when inactives come out?
I don't know if this entirely counts, but I'm kind of torn between Albert O and KJ Hamler. Albert O is going to be a little bit of the favorite just because he's tight end 1. But if KJ Hamler plays, I think he's a good enough wide receiver to do some damage for us.
I think if Kenneth Walker is out, you got to look at Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, especially in long third down situations. At the end of the game, if they're down by a few touchdowns, I'm telling you, 3 or 4 receptions from Travis Homer and 30 yards.
We've seen that.
We've seen it all the time.
We saw that last year. Yeah.
And that will immediately boost a guy that's 1.4K or DJ Dallas at 400. That boosts them way up. And potentially with a lower scoring game, you get a guy that low priced with 7 fantasy points, he might make the optimal. And a guy like DJ Dallas at 400, if he scores you 2 fantasy points, it sucks, but you could still min cash with that situation, depending on how the game goes, obviously. All right, so give me your final thoughts here on the score.
Oh, I think it's going to be like 17-12, Denver.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my 21-17 prediction here, Denver. I think the game gets close at the end, but it was never really a close or entertaining game. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is 45-50, just as a football watcher, but I don't think that's going to happen. Anyways, guys, on the way out, throw us a like, get us to that 50-like goal. We will see you for Thursday Night Football. What is Thursday Night Football? Does anybody know? Do you know what Thursday Night Football is? Isn't it isn't it the Chargers?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. we'll do our research and actually know what the game we're going to break down. I promise you that. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. And join the Discord and let us know how you guys do on the slate.